Welcome everyone to the Maximizing LinkedIn for the Job Search webinar. My name is Jennifer Rhodes. I'm one of the career advisors on the CPD team, and thank you for taking some time out today to join us. With us today, we have my wonderful colleague, Christy Graham, and she is going to be assisting with monitoring the chat and sharing some resources with you as we go through some of the content of the webinar. So just a couple of housekeeping items. Just make sure, please, that you are all on mute. I think we've been having some issues with the settings with that in the past, but we're just trying to make sure to minimize any background noise. So please make sure that everybody is on mute. And everyone that has registered for this event will be sent a copy of the recording, typically within 2 business days, as well as the PowerPoint, so you can go back and reference that. And looks like Roxanne, if you could please make sure that you're on mute so we can minimize the background noise here. Yes, and just anybody that's joining us, please make sure you're on mute just to minimize that background noise. We appreciate it. And before we get started, I do like to get to know my audience a little bit more. So if you could type in the chat here, tell me what department you're from, whether it's IT, education, healthcare, business, and what interests you most about this topic. Okay, so we have College of Business, IT, business, IT, data analytics, making the most of LinkedIn so I can find a new job. Okay. IT grad, business accounting. Not very well versed in LinkedIn, but recognizes benefits for networking and job searching. Outstanding. Business department, and I have not used LinkedIn. Okay. IT department, I'm searching for a new job. I want to make sure I use everything possible. Great, finding out, my colleague even, finding more about using LinkedIn in my job search. Excellent. Starting to look for a new job. LinkedIn is a way to go for most professional networking opportunities. Interested in learning how to maximize the efficiency while keeping a level of privacy. Outstanding. So just to preface this particular workshop, this Maximizing LinkedIn for the Job Search, just so you know, is really meant for folks that already have a LinkedIn profile created. It is more of an advanced workshop, so we won't really be going step by step in terms of what should be in your profile. However, we have an excellent presentation related to that called Creating a Powerful LinkedIn Profile. And Christy has graciously shared the link to that recording so that you can go back through there if you're still trying to create a strong profile. That webinar recording is really helpful. And also another resource that's helpful with getting a basic profile up that's strong is the LinkedIn user guide. So those are, I would say, kind of the level 1 in terms of utilizing LinkedIn, is to make sure that you get it basically a strong profile up there. But today, this particular webinar focuses on how do you maximize LinkedIn's features for the job search, and also how do you maintain a regular online presence? Because LinkedIn does have analytics that really tracks, or I should say algorithms, that really track your involvement on the site. So the more you have a regular presence, honestly, in the end, the more easily you can be found by recruiters and others. So that's what we're going to more or less be talking about today. I'll give you a little bit more of a background on that in a moment, but I did want to tell you all a little bit more about my background and training in this subject. So I just reached my 4-year anniversary with WGU, which is incredible. It honestly only feels like maybe a year and a half. Time has really flown by. I spend most of the year in Tempe, Arizona. So if we have any Arizonans out there, hello, fellow state Arizonans. But also I spend part of the year in Pennsylvania, which is where I'm originally from, and fortunate to escape the heat. I come back here to help my parents out a little bit. I'm actually still in Pennsylvania for a bit longer before I return to the nicer weather in Arizona Thank you all for the congratulations. Um, yes, we are recording this session. So, anybody that's joining us, again, welcome. Anybody that is RSVP'd for this session will be sent a copy of the recording as well as a copy of the PowerPoint, usually within 2 business days after the presentation. So, and also if you're just joining us, please make sure you remain on mute to minimize any background noise. So before joining WGU, I worked for Arizona State for about almost 10 years in different career development capacities, everything from working with first-time freshmen to career changers, seasoned professionals, online students, non-traditional, PhD postdocs. I was very fortunate to develop a very wide range and diverse level of experience. Then I had the opportunity to join WGU. What I really love about our students, quite honestly, is every day is different. I talk to all of you from all over the country, all walks of life, all different kinds of passions and career paths. So that really helps to keep me engaged and on my toes. I also have a master's in counseling. So part of my role, I'm fortunate to be able to utilize SEL, social emotional learning, and infuse some of that into our career development materials. So I do workshops on things like imposter syndrome, career resiliency in the job search, the value of mindfulness in the workplace, and I feel very fortunate to be able to utilize that background. And then in terms of LinkedIn, I've been training folks on how to use LinkedIn since about 2011. So I've seen it change a lot. I definitely know the power of the features and how to maintain a regular online presence, which we will talk about today to make sure that, again, those algorithms are capturing your activity and help you to become more visible. So we do have some other webinars, as we mentioned, that are related to LinkedIn. And networking. We have one that's called How Do I Get Started Networking, which really focuses in on the LinkedIn Alumni Tool and how to maximize this very powerful feature in connecting with others, getting more career information. I've honestly been training, as I think I mentioned, I've been training folks on how to use LinkedIn since about 2011. And I honestly believe the Alumni Tool is the most powerful feature on the site. And I say this because of all of the data that you can glean in one place and all of the research that you can do. And honestly, every school, every college and university across the country, even around the world typically, has their own school page. And within that, you can find the alumni tool to be able to do that research. And then there's the personal branding in your LinkedIn profile. This is another one that I've presented on, which really focuses on developing and articulating what is called your personal brand. And a lot of folks, if they haven't thought about this, they haven't done it before. Basically, your personal brand comes down to why you do what you do and how do you want to be known to others consistently? How do you want others to describe you when you're not in the room? These are all key elements to that personal brand. When we're done with this presentation, when you receive a copy of the recording, you will also receive a copy of this PowerPoint. And there are direct links to these particular webinars that you can access to if that's helpful. I also see that Christy is on it, sharing a lot of great resources in the chat for you too. And then maximizing LinkedIn for the job search is actually what we're doing today. So this gives you just an idea of, some of the ways we can support you with LinkedIn. The other thing that our office does, just so you know, is we do provide LinkedIn profile reviews. Now, all of those are conducted by email so that we can provide detailed feedback for you based on your profile. And we do ask that you go through the LinkedIn user guide first, because that's basically the document that we're going to be using to conduct those LinkedIn reviews. But once you go through and you use that LinkedIn user guide, you can send us an email at careers@wgu.edu with a link to your LinkedIn profile and request to have your profile reviewed. We will then provide that review within 5 business days. So just know that that is another service that we offer to you. So getting to the main content of today's presentation, we're going to start out talking about some important general tips for the job search. So in order to really maximize the effectiveness of LinkedIn for your job search, you first will need to have some basic elements identified, such as what is your job target? What experience do you have related to that job target? What are some of the gaps that you might have in terms of your experience level? And how might you meet the needs of that of the gaps that you have? So we will talk about being in a place, first of all, to conduct a general job search. Then we will talk about some specific ways to use LinkedIn to, really maximize that job search. Then we'll go into some recent LinkedIn updates. For example, I don't know if any of you have explored this, but you can do a video introduction of yourself now. Um, it's basically located where your picture is, and it's usually a good practice is about 20 to 30 seconds. But that's one example, and you can also upload up to 5 different resumes now to the site. This would be good for anybody that has a lot of diverse experience and is having a really hard time capturing it just in their general profile, and still would want to be found for different types of experience. And we will get into that more a little bit later of where to find that feature in LinkedIn and you would have to first enable it to make it work for you. And then we'll talk about maintaining your presence in minutes a day, because the more active you are, the more that the algorithms will track you and the more that likely you are to be found. So, okay. And then we will talk about next steps. Whenever I do a webinar, I honestly like to give folks what I call a 30-day challenge to try to keep the information fresh and active. I think a lot of us can relate to attending a webinar and then saying, you know what, there was some really good information in there. And then we go back to our day to day and we get really busy and we kind of forget about things. Before we know it, months have gone by and it's kind of been forgotten, right? So at the end, I give folks a 30-day challenge of what they want to implement from the webinar and how they might hold themselves accountable for that. And then we have a little bit of Q&A at the end with whatever time we have left. So as I said earlier, it's really important, first of all, to have a strong command of the elements of an effective job search ready to go first, before you look at how you will incorporate LinkedIn into your search. So some items to consider for this. First of all, asking yourself the question, do you know what your job target is? Even if you don't have, let's say, an exact 100% focused job target, do you have some ideas? Do you have sample job titles? Especially if any of you are making what we call a career pivot. And we know that a number of our students are in that situation, which is also known as our career changers. These are folks that come from usually an entirely different discipline, and they're looking to move into something entirely new for themselves. So we see a lot of folks doing this, making a career pivot into IT, for example. So if you especially are making a career pivot, do you have an idea of what the possibilities are for your degree? If you haven't explored our degree guides, that could be a really great starting point for you to basically learn about different job titles that can be related to your particular discipline. Um, then, after having an idea of what your job target might be, have you started to look at sample job descriptions? Great sites to do that would be using like Indeed, LinkedIn itself. Maybe you're looking to stay with your current company and looking to move up. Maybe there are some job descriptions within your company that you can take a look at. And then we talk about essentially when you're looking at these positions of interest, doing what we call a gap analysis. And what this really entails is looking at, for these positions of interest, what are the required qualifications in terms of skills, background, etc.? What are the desired qualifications? What do you currently possess? And then how will you fill those gaps in experience? So, for example, some folks even do what we call postgraduate internships to meet those gaps of experience. Some will do side projects at their current employer in different departments to meet some of those gaps. Some will even do volunteer projects. So there are many different ways that you could look at, again, meeting the gaps of that experience. But it is important to keep in mind when you're taking a look at what you might need to get to where you want to go. And then in addition to that, research employers of interest. So do you know what kinds of employers you might want to work for? Do you want to work in the government sector, nonprofit, business? If business, do you want small, medium, large, startup? Having an idea of the type of business, an area of employment is important too. All right, so Scott is asking any good resources on finding postgraduate internships. Well, we honestly recommend using some of our main internship resources like Handshake. The nice thing about Handshake is that it reflects the opportunities that WGU has with employers. Another one is Parker Dewey, can be a really good site for what we call micro internships. A lot of them are paid and a lot of them are remote. So it's another great resource to explore. And then another one is internships.com. It's a very general site, but it's also an excellent resource to find internships in general. So you may need to sift through those a little bit, Scott, but they are absolutely, great resources to use to look into different kinds of internships. So knowing what kind of employers you might want to work for is important. As we said, utilizing that LinkedIn Alumni Tool and LinkedIn to connect with other professionals. The value of that is that, first of all, a lot of times you can obtain firsthand career narratives that you typically wouldn't find anywhere else from people who have been down the paths before that you're exploring. And just as importantly and related to that, quite honestly, is you're getting your name in front of them. So they're getting to know your experiences, your strengths, your passion for the field. And the nice thing also, as I said, I really believe that Alumni Tool is the most powerful feature on the site because of the breadth and depth of research that you can do just from that feature. So you can see what everybody majored in, where they live, where they work, what they do, what their top skills are. So for example, some of our most versatile degrees are probably our MBA, our bachelor's in business administration or business management, human resources even. You can go on there and explore tried and true career paths from students and grads who have the same degree from the same institution that you have earned. So it can give you, again, telltale results of what people have been able to achieve, but it'll also show you their career progression. Did they do internships? What companies have they worked for? Um, what professional associations do they belong to? How have they stated their About Me experience section? So all of this can be extremely valuable to you. And I also recommend, in order to maximize this process, that you find a couple of people that you might want to talk to more directly. And the basic approach I would take is to reach out to them, customize that initial message that you send out, introduce yourself as a fellow WGU student or grad, and say something to the effect of, what caught your eye about their profile? And then say, I'm looking at the next step in my career and seeking some advice. Would you be willing to connect with me and share your perspective? Then what you're doing there is you're laying the groundwork for an informational interview. This would be the opportunity for you to ask questions like, what do you see are the greatest strengths and challenges of your role? How would you describe the culture of your company? What was it like for you to break into the IT field? Maybe if that's your situation. So you can get very valuable narrative and advice while getting your name in front of them. And as we know, people hire people. People hire people that are referred to them. People hire people that they, are recommended to them, that they trust. By the way, just speaking of the importance of networking and utilizing a tool like LinkedIn effectively, does anyone know the approximate percentage of positions that are never posted anywhere? You want to just do this little trivia question here and type in the chat what you think the response is there. Okay, I see 40%, 20, 50. I remember I was very shocked the first time I heard this statistic. Then the more I thought about it, it really made sense. 65, 70. I would say that Kaizen's the closest. It's about 80%, believe it or not. And this was from a few years ago even. So the number post-COVID could be even higher. So about 80% of the positions that exist are never posted. This is across all disciplines. So this speaks to the importance of, again, things like today's topic and having a strong networking plan, even if networking is not your favorite thing. And I can respect that. I hear that from students a lot. They say, I don't like it, or I'm not sure how to do it. It's understandable, but we don't want you to be at a disadvantage, right? So knowing how to do some networking, and a great activity for that that's structured is the informational interview. We even have sample questions and tips on one of our guides, our networking guide, that can help you with that process. And it's a great way to get in front of others in a structured way and start networking. So just keep that in mind as we're moving through here. And then creating a job search plan is really important here. So making sure that you know the elements of, again, your target, your population, having some of these items in line are really important for moving on. So now we're going to talk about some tips for LinkedIn optimization, some general things to keep in mind. So what happens when you actually optimize your profile? Having an optimized LinkedIn profile means you have a complete and updated profile with the right and relevant industry-specific keywords recruiters look for, and a strong professional online brand that ranks higher in LinkedIn searches. LinkedIn has revealed that having a complete and optimized profile alone makes you 40 times more likely to receive opportunities and be found. So that's even without you really doing a lot of interaction, but having a complete profile that's relevant to your field, 40 times more likely to receive opportunities. And also, having an optimized LinkedIn profile allows you to appear in more LinkedIn search results and increase your visibility. Because as I said earlier, the more regularly you use LinkedIn, there are algorithms that track your activity. So the more regularly you use it, the more visible you are. There's even a little test you can do. I remember doing this when I first started using and training on LinkedIn several years ago. I was on LinkedIn all the time, and I typed in my name in Google, and I put the school I worked for. And my name was one of the first ones that popped up for when someone's trying to find me through LinkedIn, just through Google because of my activity. So that can be, again, very telltale in terms of your involvement on the site. Also, optimization means that you have built and strengthened your professional brand. Once again, you're going to receive a copy of this PowerPoint. I believe that early slide also includes a link to the professional branding workshop, but here it is again, so you can take a look. It also allows you to position yourself as an expert and or thought leader in your industry. Now, I know from doing my imposter syndrome webinar, and I can relate to this, is when someone calls you an expert, you may feel very uncomfortable. So this doesn't mean that you have to be the top voice in your field to publish articles on LinkedIn, to share an article about your field and give your perspective. It's all about remembering that you all have a story to tell. And you can definitely do it on LinkedIn. Even as students at WGU, which honestly is a very unique institution and has a unique approach to learning. You could even publish an article about your perspective, and hopefully it's positive because you do want to keep your input as positive as possible, but your perspective as a student participating in competency-based education. You could talk about the skills and competencies you've demonstrated related to this, like being a self-starter, being comfortable with technology, being required to master a great amount of information in a short amount of time and demonstrate that mastery quickly. So this is all through your lens that you can tell these stories. You do not have to be what's considered quote unquote the top expert in your field. It's all about through your lens, through your story, what you can share. Also, optimization allows you to stand out if you apply for a job through LinkedIn, because again, LinkedIn tracks that material as well, or that involvement. And also, optimization is shown when you build relationships with recruiters and other professionals. So doing things like following company pages of companies that you're interested in, liking comments that the companies put on their pages even, connecting with some folks from companies of interest. These are all ways that you can really foster that optimization. Yes, and Scott mentions you can take skills assessment as well. Absolutely. That's a great idea because that is going to help you to narrow down and showcase some of those skills for others. Now, also, how to optimize your LinkedIn profile. Assure that the profile sections are current and complete. So the live link in here goes to that LinkedIn user guide that Christy has shared in the chat earlier. And I always like to give a shout out to my colleague McCall because she was really instrumental in updating that LinkedIn user guide. It's honestly extremely comprehensive. It'll take you section by section, everything from your headline to your about me, to your recommendations, to your skills. And there are some really helpful LinkedIn learning videos to go along with those sections. So going through that guide and really digesting it, taking your time, usually results in having a very strong profile. Also, ensure that you appear on LinkedIn searches when recruiters conduct searches by adding relevant keywords to your profile. So this goes back to, are you familiar with what your job target and possibly your target audience might be? That a lot of times can help you to narrow down what are the keywords that are relevant to your field. Is it, keywords like if you're in leadership, servant leader, project management, optimizing people and processes. Like, what are some of the keywords that are related to your field? And then making sure those keywords appear in areas like your headline, your job titles, the About Me section, without doing what we call keyword dumping. So especially in that About Me section, that's where your career narrative is really going to shine through. And you want to be careful not to just dump a lot of terms there. If you're not able to back up why you've put them where they are, like, you can do a specialty section in that About Me section, but even if you do that, there should be evidence of your specialties in your employment experience and the bullets related to that. So again, being familiar with what are the keywords, making sure they're used appropriately throughout that profile, that helps employers and recruiters to find you. And also grab the recruiter's attention so that when they view your LinkedIn profile, they will want to read more about you. The attention grabbers can typically be found in the headline for some folks. Some folks are able to be very creative and narrow down what we call their why in that headline section. For example, a good friend of mine who is now Executive Director of Career Services at UC San Diego, I remember her tagline was so simple but so creative. And this was actually her headline. It said, "Your career is my career." So if you can have something really catchy, and very concise like that, that can draw people in. Or also the About Me section. And in the LinkedIn user guide, there are suggestions on ways to really to develop that. And typically that section, you would usually allow for about 3 to 4 paragraphs. And the tricky part with that, I think, for a lot of people is there's not one exact way to do that About Me section, but there are some elements to think about. Is there a story that you can tell to grab the reader's attention? Do you want to talk about the problems you want to solve in your field, or your leadership philosophy and how you draw upon that, or how you develop that leadership? Do you want to talk about how you built up your career and how you ended up pursuing your particular area? These can all be attention grabbers, and they can be ways to set you apart from other candidates. Those of you that are making a career pivot, if you could start to think about how your prior career experience can uniquely position you to be an innovator in your field, that would be excellent to talk about. So, for example, I talked to a student today, and it's not very often we get these folks. She earned an MBA from us, but she also has a doctorate in osteopathic medicine. And she was writing a personal statement, which some of that content honestly could almost transition over to an About Me section. But we talked about for her, when we're working on this personal statement, how can you uniquely combine your MBA and your doctor of osteopathy together to show how you can be an asset to the field? And having an MBA in the medical field can really help you to have an understanding of processes behind the scenes, right? Have a comprehensive view of the business side of healthcare. So having you start to think about, and this is reflected in that personal branding workshop, but having you start to think about how are you uniquely qualified to enter your field based on prior experience, especially if you're making a career pivot. How do you tie that all together? And some tips for optimizing your LinkedIn further. First of all, it's important to decide your primary purpose for the use of LinkedIn at this time. So basically, what is your purpose for utilizing LinkedIn right now? Do you want to expand your network and reach primarily? Are you in active job seeking mode? Do you want to establish yourself as a thought leader in your field or industry? Do you want to show recruiters that you are open to work? Whatever your goals are, these should guide you as you intentionally and strategically build your LinkedIn profile and strategy. And I see a question come in. Is it acceptable or allowed to ask a previous WGU class instructor for a recommendation being a career pivot case? You can absolutely reach out to that instructor and ask for a recommendation. Um, and you want to keep some things in mind in terms of how long have they known you, and are they able to speak adequately to your character and your work ethic? And some instructors might feel like they haven't known you long enough and they may, decline, and please try not to take that personally. But it definitely is worth reaching out and seeing if that course instructor might be willing to provide you a recommendation. And yes, that's what we talk about when folks are making a pivot. Looking at any academic background and experience and putting that at the forefront can be a great idea on your resume, and also in terms of recommendations and such. So absolutely, you can reach out, and I do think it's worth a try. Yeah, that's a great question. So deciding your primary purpose for your use of LinkedIn at this time. If it's active job seeking, your strategy might be a little more comprehensive than maybe just expanding your network at this time. And then this whole concept of thinking like a recruiter. So now that you have pinned down your LinkedIn goals, you need to switch hats and think like a recruiter, because ultimately it's the recruiter who calls the shots, right? So you must be strategic about what you include in your profile to solidify your professional brand and impress recruiters. So here are some questions to think about and review in terms of content. What type of job candidate would the recruiter like to hire for this position you are interested in? Would they want someone innovative? Would they want someone compassionate? Would they want someone who has a comprehensive understanding of the field, for example? What skills would the recruiter or prospective employer want you to have to be successful? That could go back to looking at sample job descriptions for positions of interest, or even using that LinkedIn Alumni Tool and taking a look at profiles of others that are accomplished in the field. I like this next one a lot. What problems would the recruiter want you to solve? Because this is really big to be able to articulate. I especially recommend that folks put that in the About Me section and talk about, what bothers you about your current field? What changes do you want to see? So, for example, a lot of our folks that are in healthcare administration, maybe they started out in patient-centered positions, and now they're kind of working up to either leadership or more administrative roles. And a lot of times they talk about their frustrations in terms of the processes blocking the progress for their patients, or how things need to be more streamlined, especially in terms of insurance and such. So that's where they can see where maybe their impact could be there. What information on your profile would the recruiter love to see? What keywords or skills would the recruiter be looking for? You may also go as far as to seek help from real recruiters and ask them what they would search for to find the candidate for the specific role. So with that, sometimes people will reach out to recruiters on LinkedIn, kind of the reverse of what you usually see with recruiters reaching out candidates on LinkedIn, and seeing if that recruiter might be open to either answering some questions by email or setting up a brief 5 to 10 minute chat to speak with them about the candidates they're looking for. That can be hit or miss, but I definitely think it's worth exploring to get more input from a recruiter. Then in your experience section, link to your previous company's LinkedIn page. So when you're going in and putting the job experience, if you link to your previous company's page, this will increase your searchability and you will up your profile once a recruiter and they will pull up your profile once a recruiter or hiring manager decides to look up your company profile. So, and if you have your own company, create your own LinkedIn company page so that you can link that directly to it. So again, this just increases your visibility by adding that to the company page. Also, focus on the top 3 primary skills in your skills section. You may have noticed that when you're viewing a profile, LinkedIn only automatically shows the top 3 skills. Then the recruiter or whoever's looking at it needs to click on another link to see the rest of your skills, but it's a good idea to prioritize those top 3 in that section. LinkedIn users with 5 or more skills listed on their profile receive 33 times more messages from recruiters and other members and get 17 times more profile views. So LinkedIn also allows you to add a maximum of 50 skills. So maximize this opportunity by looking at what's important in your field and taking kind of an inventory of what you can do there. Also, adding your resume to LinkedIn can be helpful for recruiters to look at so that they can have that information in one place. We will get to, again, the option of adding up to 5 different resumes if you'd like to do so. We'll get to that in just a moment. Joining relevant LinkedIn groups. This will also continue to promote your visibility, allow you to network with more people, contribute to, different discussions that are happening, and really increase your visibility. And also just some general tips to boost recruiter results. As we said earlier, follow companies of interest to demonstrate engagement and see job postings in your newsfeed. Enhance your network by connecting to 5 to 10 people at each company. Create a job alert for companies by going to the company's profile page and clicking the Jobs tab, Create Job Alert. Stay active with a company's brand by liking, sharing, and commenting on their posts. When you regularly engage with a company's LinkedIn page or posts and apply to a job they've posted on LinkedIn, you will be spotlighted on LinkedIn's hiring platform called LinkedIn Recruiter. So again, all of this goes back to visibility, especially if you are targeting a particular company. These are all really great practices. Use hashtags. You may have noticed if you have posted something, and I mean, I even encourage you to let your network know whenever you're participating in any professional development. So workshops, even like today's, if you wanted to say what you learned about today, when you're going to post something, LinkedIn will suggest a hashtag. So you may want to also publish that for additional visibility. Maintain regular presence through publishing articles, sharing samples of your work, posting about professional activities like I just mentioned. Also, expanding your network and making new connections. Maybe you even make a goal for yourself. If your big focus is to expand your network, maybe you say, okay, I'm going to work on adding 5 new contacts per week for the next month and see how that goes. And also update your LinkedIn profile regularly. As we get toward the end of the presentation, I will show you how to divide up your involvement regularly, Monday through Friday. And it's like on Fridays it has even a little suggested time frame to update your profile. I know when I first started using LinkedIn pretty actively, I was challenged with this. I said, gosh, I can do a lot of different activities in a month. How can I make sure I'm on there updating my status? And I would just put a reminder on my Outlook calendar for the first week of the month to work on my LinkedIn profile, maybe give myself an hour. And that tended to be helpful for me to get into that habit. So just something to think about there. Oh, going too fast here. Okay, so I do want to share with you some recent LinkedIn updates, and then I will hop on my site to show you a couple of features to keep in mind as well. So for those of you who love statistics, which is great because that is where we can track a lot of actual activity, right? 86% of companies now use social recruiting to source candidates. Now, this is not just LinkedIn, but this is also, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of those different platforms. And then in terms of LinkedIn data, and this was as of March of this year, 58.4 million plus companies are on there, 6.4 million plus jobs, 77 job applications are submitted every 60 seconds. There are 900 million plus users. I can remember when there were only, I think, 300 million. So this really is blowing my mind. 94% of recruiters use LinkedIn to find, vet, and hire talent. This is just another reason why it's so important to have a strong online LinkedIn profile and also a LinkedIn presence, because so many folks do use this as a pre-screening platform. 3 people are also hired every 60 seconds. I find all of this fascinating. So there are keywords that are vital for search engine optimization. So when recruiters are looking to find you, these are some important tips in terms of keywords. So having a wide range of keywords is important, and also the repetition of those keywords in appropriate places. Like I said, you want to avoid just keyword dumping without having support of those keywords. So if in your About Me section, you're talking about how you are a servant leader, able to manage multiple projects simultaneously, you make data-driven decisions to better the workplace, then in your work experience, there should be bullet points that talk about each of those areas. Then using full word and acronym is a good practice for this. So in other words, instead of just saying CRM for customer relationship management, spelling it out and then also using the acronym. This is especially important if your profession has its own language, if you will, and there are a number of acronyms. It's good to make sure that those are spelled out. And then in terms of keywords, the headline, the skills section, and the job title lines are indexed first by recruiters when they use their software to find you. So those are the areas you really want to make sure your keywords are in, the adequate keywords in the headline, the skills section, and the job titles. Then the About section, as we said earlier, is really key for branding. This is where you tell your personal narrative. Talk about the problems you want to solve, your leadership style, summarizing your academic and career history, talking about your specialties, talking about the call to action from there if applicable. Those are all important. Yes, and I just see a couple comments here. Tech industry is tough, very tough to get into, need right mindset. Yes, yes, and also I would say that that's a big area where networking is going to be huge, right? Is getting your name out there in front of as many folks as you can. And then writing to your future, making sure that your industry, location, and profile align with your target goal. And then getting spotlighted in LinkedIn Recruiter. The best way to assure that is, again, by following these tips. So looking at the keywords, spelling out the acronym, using the term, looking at which areas are indexed first. These are all really important to know. Then, as I said earlier, there are a couple of updates here. So now you can send video and audio recordings when you're using the mobile app and through Messenger. So I encourage you, those of you that kind of really enjoy the video development, and if you want to try out the voice greeting, you can definitely do that. You will need to be in edit mode, and you can go through and practice working on that. Or, I mean, when you reach out to others, if you want to stand out, if you're using the mobile app, you can send a video introduction instead of typing up, I'm a fellow WGU student and um, looking at the next steps in my career. Maybe you send either an audio, and usually you want to keep these very brief, 25 to 30 seconds. Audio, or excuse me, video is 25 to 30, audio about 15. And it's a great way, again, to set yourself apart. Or maybe after an interview, you send a video or audio thank you. I haven't heard of a lot of people doing this yet. So that's another way that you can really set yourself apart and be more memorable to folks. And then there's also been an updated industry list. What this means essentially is that there are even more job titles on there than ever before. And they're classified under the North American Industry Classification System. So sharing your resume data. Now you can, as I said earlier, you can save up to 5 different resumes in your LinkedIn profile. So LinkedIn will use data from stored resumes to help you get found. You do have to enable this feature under the job section. And once you enable this, your resume data will get pulled into recruiter searches, just like from your profile data. This is a good option for people who are fearful about sharing things a great deal right on their profile. It provides a little bit of a different protection, or have a highly robust work history from many different areas. Recruiters won't see your full resume, just the data in your stored resumes. So information for the stored resumes can be used to personalize your feed, suggest LinkedIn Learning courses, improve how jobs are ranked when you search, help recruiters find you, recommend jobs you might be interested in, and also recommend connections to grow your network. So after applying for a job on LinkedIn, you will be presented with a prompt to share your resume data with all recruiters, and the share resume data with recruiters toggle will be turned on. You can either turn it off from the prompt or the application settings page. And in a minute, I'm going to hop on and again, show you kind of on my profile. To opt in or opt out of resume sharing from your job application settings, you can basically go into the Jobs tab. You will click on the application settings, and then there's the toggle there to share your resume data with recruiters. And then they can access that resume sharing feature. You can also toggle off share your resume data with recruiters to stop sharing. To manage your resumes through your job application settings, navigate to the Jobs tab, go into the application part, upload a new resume in that section, and you can also delete resumes in that section as well. Another new feature that I think is really helpful is now you can, there's an interview preparation platform. So like we have Big Interview that you can utilize to record your responses and practice on camera. There is now an interview prep platform through LinkedIn, which allows you to record video responses to common questions and some industry specific. There are also sample answers provided, instant AI feedback, and you can request feedback from connections by sharing videos if you've established that rapport. So that's another really neat newer feature there. So before we get into the sharing LinkedIn presence in minutes a day, I do want to hop on my profile for just a minute. So let me stop sharing for just a second here. Okay, and so when you're on your profile, this is where you would kind of do a little bit of a cross check to make sure that, does your tagline support your overall personal brand? Does your slide behind your profile express that? You can have up to 5 different featured pieces of work in this section. This can support your personal brand, whether it's an article you've done, a picture of you in action, copy of a PowerPoint that you've done. Excuse me. So all of these can support what you're saying about your top skills and competencies. And then this is that About Me section where you can tell your career narrative. You can have a specialty section, with keywords used appropriately. Your experience section should support those keywords that you're talking about. Then down here, just the other thing that I really want to point out is to make sure that you have some recommendations. When I review LinkedIn profiles, that's probably one of the biggest areas that is lacking. And it's recommended that you start out with probably about 2 to 3. And the nice thing is that, you would request these through LinkedIn, but the nice thing is that you have to agree to publish them for them to appear on your profile. So let's say that someone provides a recommendation that you feel like doesn't really quite adequately show what you do, or maybe there's a lot of misspellings or things that you're concerned about. You do not have to publish those, but just know that you have the option to publish those first. Then getting back through here, making sure your skills are reflective of what you do and that your top 3 appear first. So you can see on mine here, like student services, career services, cover letters. If I was actively seeking, which I'm not, I might change this around a little bit and put a couple of other key skills in here. But that feature that I was talking about earlier, if you go to the job section here, here's where you can set up job alerts, to track any different kinds of positions you're looking for. Under application settings, this is where you can upload, you would have to enable this first, but you can upload up to 5 different resumes for folks to look at. So that can, again, if you have a very robust work history or you're only wanting to share certain things, you can put that in this section as well. So, okay, I'm going to pause for a minute because it looks like there were some comments in here. Okay, so there used to be a section where people would write testimonials. Since I've been using the site, Deborah, this was since 2011. I don't remember seeing that. I can tell you that the closest to that would be the recommendations. So like if I'm going back here, people can endorse you, which is sort of like a testimonial, but it's basically people going through and saying you are good at, career counseling, you are good at project management. So they can endorse you. And then the recommendations are, I would say, the closest to what we call testimonials that I would recommend there. So, okay, I have different resumes for different states I'm willing to live in. I don't believe in trapping myself with tech and resume possibility. I have so many versions of my resume for various states. Okay, so SK, the trick with that though is you don't want to appear like you're all over the place. So you do want to at least make sure that your About Me section is pretty focused on what kinds of problems you're wanting to solve, what you want to get into, how you would like to make some contributions to the professional field. Okay, and someone asked, does this mean my phone number, which is on my resume, will be shared for recruiters as well? Yes, unless you leave it off of there, I would say. And I would think that, in most cases, if you're really actively job seeking, you would want them to have that, but you can leave it off if you prefer. And Scott, thank you for attending. I appreciate that. But you can, SK is bringing up, you can personal information private. You can control your privacy settings, but on those resumes, I would be careful because they should be able to pull all of that information from there. And then who do we get recommendations from? Basically, these should be at this point in your career, they should be professional versus personal. So these should be people that they could be colleagues, they could be supervisors, they could be instructors, they could be folks at WGU that know your work ethic and your character. These are all great people to reach out to. How do you arrange the 3 skills at the top? You need to be in edit mode, and then you can go through and order them. So I hope that that's helpful. All right, now we only have a couple minutes left, so I want to make sure we get through the rest of this. So let's go here, and 1 second. Stop sharing for just a second to make sure this displays properly. Okay, so how do you break this down into a manageable system to be able to maintain your presence online? So I found an article a while back that I wanted to share with all of you that just gives you an idea of how you can make this more manageable while still maintaining that presence. So for on Monday, for example, this is about like 15 minutes a day. Maybe you spend 5 minutes scanning your feed. If you're actively job seeking, maybe you spend 10 minutes searching for jobs. If you're not actively job seeking, maybe you spend 10 minutes using the people you may know feature and adding folks on there. So that can be a great way to start your week in this process. And then Tuesday, maybe you do that 5 minute scan. Maybe you spend 5 minutes visiting top LinkedIn groups, comment, starting a discussion. Again, all those algorithms will be tracked. And then spend the last 5 minutes clearing your inbox. Then Wednesday, maybe you do that 5 minute scan of your feed again. Spend 10 minutes expanding your network using that alumni tool. Maybe the last 5 minutes clearing out that inbox. Then Thursday, getting toward the end of the week, 5 minute scan of the feed, like or comment on at least 3 posts. Maybe spend 10 minutes searching LinkedIn company pages for fit under information on your industry. For those LinkedIn company pages, you can also check out the people also viewed area to find companies doing similar work. And for the groups, maybe you post some thoughts on a featured discussion or do a search on your area of interest and comment on a discussion related to that topic. Or you can also start a discussion yourself and see what people have to say. It's all great ways to stay active there. And then Friday, spend 5 minutes endorsing skills and experience of others. Spend 5 minutes reviewing and revising your profile at the end of the week. If you're really disciplined and can do that at the end of the week, that makes that job a lot easier. And then remaining 5 minutes, reflect on past week accomplishments and add information, respond to any new messages or requests to connect. So hopefully that gives you just some idea of how you can break this down a little bit. And just to pause for a minute, Kaiser was asking, who should we get recommendations from? If you're talking about on LinkedIn specifically, what I would do is I would go back through the companies that you have on there, find folks if you can that you can reach out to. And when you're in edit mode, it will walk you through how to send recommendation requests to those folks. LinkedIn used to recommend that you have at least one recommendation for each job listed. However, we're really realizing that can be quite the challenge, especially if your work experience goes back beyond 5 years and you've worked at different places. So if you can typically start out with 2 to 3 recommendations, that can be really helpful. Practice some of these habits. So SK read millions of CEOs practice some of these habits to network and connect. Of course, they do it all on a higher scale. Yes, absolutely. So as we're getting to a close, this is where I bring up the 30-day challenge. So what I recommend that you do is to write down approximately 30 days from now is going to be October 26th. I would recommend writing down that date and committing to 3 next steps that you're willing to take after this webinar. Whether it be, I'm going to explore the Alumni Tool and I'm going to connect with at least 5 people in the next month. Or I'm going to use the Alumni Tool and do at least 2 informational interviews in the next 30 days. Or maybe you say, I'm going to try out the multiple resume feature in LinkedIn. Or I'm going to do a video introduction. I recommend that you commit to 3 next steps, whatever you found interesting and that you find doable from this. Write down, again, that target date is October 26th. And then write down a way that you can hold yourself accountable. Do you have an accountability buddy that you think you could check in with? Whether it is a significant other, a colleague, a classmate, someone that you could check in with to see if you were able to follow up could be very helpful on that. And then this is just an overview of the services that we offer. So everything from, you know, document reviews. So we do resume reviews, cover letter reviews, LinkedIn profile reviews, all by email. We do appointments on everything from I'm getting this degree, I'm not sure what I want to do with it, to I'm getting this degree to build my leadership capability. I want to stay with my company. How do I best strategize that? To I'm looking outside of my company now, where can I go? To what are the top resources to use for my job search? To how do I put together a networking strategy? How do I talk about salary negotiation? One service I highly recommend to all of you is to schedule an appointment for a mock or practice interview. If you haven't done that, it's just a very valuable experience because it gives you the opportunity to practice common interview questions in a place that's low stakes, but you're still kind of on the spot. So it's a great way to practice some of your responses there. And in addition to that, through Handshake, we have a number of events, employer information sessions. You can track our webinars that we offer. Internships, full-time opportunities are shared through there. So definitely keep that on your radar as a main resource. And then in addition to all of that, this is our contact information, our website, our email. If you want a review of your LinkedIn profile, once again, you can send us a message to careers@wgu.edu with a request to have your LinkedIn profile reviewed with the URL included. We do ask you to go through that LinkedIn user guide first, because if those points are followed, typically we're just going to reiterate that you'll need to follow a lot of those guidelines. One other thing I just want to outline is that you're definitely welcome to make an appointment with us. Our calendar's open 2 weeks out. Sometimes we get booked up. So let's say you need more immediate assistance. Sometimes we get folks that just get an alert and say, oh my gosh, I have an interview tomorrow. I'd like to talk to someone. You can call the number on the screen here and leave a voicemail during regular business hours, and your call will be returned within 24 business hours. A lot of times we really do try to return that the same day, but that is a way to get quicker service if you need it. Okay, so we are at the end. And Cliff gave or SK gave a shout out to Cliff. Thank you. He's a fantastic team member. Just like Christy said, he's amazing. Yes, and Christy, thank you so much for sharing all those links. And Kaizen, thank you for the positive feedback. Really appreciate that. And SK shouts out for their mentor too. That's awesome. I really like hearing positive feedback like this. I oftentimes talk about how I've worked at a few different institutions in my career, and I have never worked for one that was truly um, as student-centered as WGU. So I'm very proud to work for WGU. Heard a lot of positive feedback from folks too. All right, so I know we're running over here. I know it's a lot of content. So just if you have any questions, please feel free, just in the last minute or two, type in. I'll try to answer them for you. And if you need to go, thanks for taking time out of your day today. You will be sent a recording of this and a copy of the PowerPoint, usually within 2 business days, and you can review this some more and hopefully stick with that 30-day challenge we talked about. And thank you all for positive feedback. It's greatly appreciated. Oh, Christy, thank you. You're fantastic as well. Thank you, Roxanne. Appreciate the comments. Jimmy, thank you. We appreciate that. Positive feedback. All right. Well, I don't see any further questions, but just let us know if we can be of assistance to you in the future. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day today.